Hey, this is Todd. Wanted to spend some time today talking about how to succeed at using random encounters. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. If I were able to make it my lifelong mission for people to have a better understanding of what random encounters are and how to use them, and I could accomplish that, I would feel that my life had been fulfilled. But let's just take it baby steps at a time. I see a lot of folks online. In fact, someone who was nice enough to comment on a video over the weekend look at random encounters as an impediment to their games, or at least not something that they want to use in their games. When I see these comments come up, I see two main responses. One, they're too random. This is what the commenter on one of my videos posted. I've also seen it on Reddit. I've seen it elsewhere. The second main one is they slow the game down. Let me take the second one first. It really depends on how you were defining the game. When someone says it's slowing the game down, what is the game? If the game is your players and you're guiding them to your set pieces, and that's all you want them to experience, and that's all the experience is set piece A to set piece B to set piece C down the line, then anything that might move them away from the next set piece or slow down their progress at next set piece, sure, that's slowing down the game. But if the game is a party of individuals exploring dangerous places and dealing with the things that are there, then a random encounter is part and parcel of the game. And I would argue that not only do they not have to slow down the game, but that they can enhance the game. That any time they may take away from this precious set piece that we're getting to can actually be something that can enhance the experience of that set piece. And if not the set piece itself, then the experience of that session. I think this response really ties back into the first one, which is that they're too random. Because people visualize random encounters as being outside the narrative or the story, the experience that they are trying to create with their players, they look at it as an obstacle to that story, to that narrative, to that experience, when in reality, random encounters are a tool and they don't have to seem random at all, which is really what most of this video is going to be about. Hopefully I can do a good job with that. Let's go forward and we'll find out together, shall we? Random encounters, right off the bat, I just want to say that random encounters were not called random encounters in the first versions of the game. They were called wandering monsters. I think this has a really different feel. And while yes, it's just a name, I think it's important because when people see random encounter, that random bit sticks out in their brain. And I really think that people tend to look at it and say, oh, it's random. Whereas wandering monsters sounds something that's much more embedded in the fiction. You have a place and there are creatures that wander through that place. You may meet them. Here are the ones you can meet. Random, it's just stuff falling from the sky. Random. Maybe I exaggerated, but I really believe that people will go back and just read something and they'll say, oh, random encounter. Oh, it's random. They read wandering monster. Maybe they look at it differently and say, okay, what is wandering around this place look like? However you wish to call it, the random part in a random encounter is about the generation. You're using dice, a random element, to generate a piece of content. That's why it's called a random encounter. It is not called a random encounter because your party should experience them just as random things that happen to pop up, as if you were playing Final Fantasy VII. Your party's marching down the desert, all of a sudden the screen swirls and they find themselves fighting blobs. For some reason. Why are blobs in the desert? It doesn't matter. It's a random encounter. If you want to run your random encounters like that in your game, by all means, go to. But it doesn't have to be that way, and it's not mandated to be that way. And I think a lot of people get thrown off by the fact that they look at that. Maybe they have experiences from video games. Maybe they just read random, or maybe they tried it once and didn't really put in the work to prep their random encounters for their game, and they came across feeling like this is just stuff that's just appearing out of nowhere that makes no sense. I don't like it. Get rid of it. Here are the steps that you need to take to really make random encounters work for you. It does take some effort and work on the part of you, the GM, to get this ready. However, once they're ready, as if you've watched my videos on hex crawls, it's a similar process. You put in work up front that's going to pay off later when you have all these tools that are just ready to be used with little to no effort on your part, but there does take some work up front. If you look in BX or 1E DMG or the Three Little Brown Books, you will see random encounter tables or wandering monster tables at that point for either the wilderness or the dungeons. These are generic lists. That's kind of the point. If you're in a crunch, your party's wandering just through an area you don't have prepped, you need some monsters, or you think that they might have a chance to run into something, you roll the dice, it comes up, there's a monster here, you can use those. They are generic. You are meant to take these, use them when you have no other option, but when you are running a place that is thematic, then you create your own thematic lists. And you find this in just about any adventure, any module, any campaign setting in which either more or less than these sort of generic monsters are around. And this is true in the OSR. It is true in 5th edition. And one of the discussions I got into on Reddit, somebody was complaining about random encounters. And I point out that if you go to look at Tomb of Annihilation, it has a random encounter list. That random encounter list looks very different from the one in Curse of Strahd. Why? Because there are dinosaurs and all kinds of jungle things. And there are some undead elements, I believe, in Tomb of Annihilation, but it's very much supposed to fit into that place, whereas the lists for Tomb of Strahd are very much supposed to fit into the context of that place. If you take the Tomb of Strahd encounters and you throw them into Tomb of Annihilation, unless you do some kind of brain work as you're going along, it's going to feel out of place. When you have a very thematic location in your game that your party's running through, and you go back to the generic list, yes, some of that stuff isn't going to make a lot of sense unless you do work at the time to make it fit. Spend a few minutes and create your own random encounter list. You can use the generic ones as a basis. Take the generic lists, look at them, make a copy of it, cross off the ones that, hey, that doesn't fit, this doesn't fit, this doesn't fit, then replace those with things that fit. You come up with an encounter table that will match the context of the place the player characters are in. Then if you roll an encounter off that list, instead of saying, oh, we're in this holy temple of the god of no undead, why did zombies show up here? Instead, you get, oh, here are some acolytes of this temple of the random god of no undead. So great, that makes total sense. I can already think about how they have reasons to be here. So that's step 1, create your own customized random encounter list. The second step is, okay, so you have this list. Now that you're looking at this list, you have your game, they are in this place. You look at your list of random encounters, they make sense. Your party is going along. You think, okay, it's time to roll random encounter or a wandering monster check. I roll my wandering monster check, it comes up monsters. I roll on my list, I get monster X. Before you open your mouth to your party and say, you turn the corner, or if you roll for distance and you say 80 meters away or 80 feet away is creature X, think about why that creature is there. Hopefully you have customized your list at this point, so everything fits in a general context. Now create a specific context for why this creature is 90 feet away down this corridor from the party. Let's go back to that esoteric temple of the god of no undead. I've rolled up acolytes. I said they're 80 feet away. I decide, well, that's around this corner. I count squares. Okay, that's probably around the corner from where they are. So the party is going to hear them, make some surprise checks. But if nobody's surprised, the party hears them, they hear the party. Before I say anything, I'm going to think about, okay, where they are. They're on level 2 of this location of this temple complex. What's over here? There's some prayer rooms. Okay, I'm going to say that these are acolytes who are on their way to one of these different prayer rooms to do some prayers. Maybe these guys, they make some kind of meditative chanting as they walk. So they kind of hear the chanting, but then they stop because they hear the party moving around, which does not sound like chanting. It doesn't sound like other acolytes. So now they're kind of stopping. So the party will hear some kind of chanting, some shuffling of sandaled feet. And then sort of a awkward silence will fall. And of course, the party probably stops too. So they get this awkward silence. And at that point, maybe we'll see what happens. But I have this idea, this reason in my head. Okay, these acolytes, they're here. The players, they might think this is a set encounter. If I'm behind a screen and I'm not obviously saying suddenly rolling random encounters, they may not have no idea that it's random. And I think that's really my point. Your party need never know these are random. They're in a temple. They're moving around this temple space. There are bound to be acolytes. There have to be acolytes here doing stuff that makes sense in the context of the place, in the context of the moment. So now they're here. With this purpose, I can then run the encounter, whether it goes to fighting, whether they get to talking, whether the acolytes run away screaming, whatever the outcome, it can make sense in the context of this moment. These are acolytes who are just going to go to their prayer space, but they've run into something, or they think they've run into something that they don't think should be there. Now, when I'm playing them, I have an idea of what they're going to do, what they're thinking, and the players can decide what they're doing, what they're thinking. It doesn't have to seem random. It doesn't have to feel like just some random acolytes dropped from the skies and landed with a thud in front of the party, and now we're just going to get it on like Donkey Kong. I could run it that way. I wouldn't, because I'm not running that kind of gonzo game. But my point is that just because it was a randomly generated moment doesn't mean that everything stops and it becomes just random craziness. Again, like you were playing in a computer role-playing game like Final Fantasy. Fit it in the context of the moment. And guess what? If it doesn't make sense, if you roll up the acolytes and then you think to yourself, but they've already killed all the acolytes and they know they've killed all the acolytes. There were 100. They went into some room. They killed 100. They counted them out 100. And so there's no possibility there could be more acolytes around. Then either A, roll the table again and then take a different result that makes more sense, or just ditch it. If it doesn't make sense that now that there's anybody left there walking around because they've emptied it, then just ignore that result. It doesn't have to happen. You don't have to jam it, force it in there just because you rolled it. The tables are there to feed into you. If something doesn't make sense, regardless of however it came from, then just get rid of it or change it. Well, it doesn't make sense, these acolytes, but maybe there's this other thing that makes more sense. I'll do those instead. The table is to help you. You are not locked to the table. To circle back to the concept of, oh, well, this is slowing down the game. There's no reason why, if you roll acolytes in a random encounter and you know that you on your encounter list in different rooms and places, you have acolytes, that you couldn't just take the acolytes from that room and say to yourself, well, maybe the acolytes from room 8 came down the hallway over here. So this acolyte encounter just replaces that one. They don't have to be two separate encounters. Really makes it seem more dynamic if your guys are moving around anyway. Both, I know for the players it feels that way, and for me it feels that way. Just replace it. Okay, I have acolytes. There were acolytes over here, but they counted them in the hall. So now when I get to that room, I'll just cross out no more acolytes here. They were in the hallway. They're gone. Or if some of them ran away, maybe they ran back here. Maybe there's something else there now. Easy peasy. No game slowing down. No, it doesn't make sense. You're just putting encounters. You're putting things in front of your party that make sense. And listen, I've said this multiple times. I will say it again. I think that these elements that are dynamic, they make your world feel more alive. They really add that sense of discovery, not just for the players, but for me as a GM, which gets my brain moving. I think it's a great tool. Pick the next location that your party's going and create a contextual list of monsters or just creatures that they could encounter that are wandering through that space. Try it. Try taking a moment to build a context for them, both when you're putting them in your list and also when you roll them up. Why is this here? Build that context around these creatures that your players are going to encounter to make them make sense. If you do those things, you will find that the random encounters are an additive, a net plus to your game, not something that subtracts from the game, not something that detracts from the game, but something that will help your game be better. So please try it. And next time you think to yourself, well, this encounter is just too random, it's not the encounter, it's you. You don't want it to be random, don't make it random. That's entirely in your power to control. You can do that by either taking a moment before you present the party with whatever they've encountered to make it make sense. If you find that you can't, pick something else. And how do you prep for that? Is you create lists of things that make sense. I hope you found this useful. If you like these videos, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the button. There's the bell you can hit to be notified. I really appreciate it. My 1,000 subscriber giveaway is still in play. I think as of recording this, I'm somewhere in the 930s. I'm trying to get to 1,000. So still plenty of space to get on there. How do you get into this giveaway? Subscribe to the channel and then subscribe to my newsletter, or subscribe on Patreon or Coffee. Links are all in there. That way, essentially, I can get your email address so that when I hit 1,000 subscribers here, I will go through those lists. I will pick up a random email from them and they will get a copy of Hexographer by Inkwell Ideas. It's an awesome piece of software for creating hex maps. I don't spam emails. I don't do that. I think I send the newsletter out maybe once a month. I'm still varying it a bit. Once a month, maybe a little bit more often than that. Anyway, I think there's good stuff in there. I try not to be spammy. Thanks to all my Patreon backers for helping make this possible. I couldn't do it without you. Game on. and I will talk to you later.